All right, we are live. Welcome into Raw Takes Live with Andrew Hody. Hope you're having a fantastic day today. Hope everyone is doing well. As I mentioned, let's get right down to business. Like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this later on YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, make sure to give us a like, comment below, give us your thoughts. We'll be right here for you. Also, make sure to react as the video goes on if you're just joining the live as well. Welcome on board to Raw Takes Live. Hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Let's get going with some preseason football here. There were some preseason games last night in the NFL. We'll take a look at those. The Green Bay Packers today and the Colts play later today. So there are some games that are on today too. Obviously the Browns and the Eagles here in Cleveland. Well, that's in Philadelphia, but the joint practices for Cleveland, yada, yada, yada. That'll be taking place later today. Patriots, Vikings. Last night was the Chiefs and the Seahawks 33-16 and the Titans and Falcons 23-20. You know, as I said before in last week's edition of Raw Takes Live, I don't really take too much away from the preseason outside of, what the young guys are going to be able to do. I don't really pay attention too much to, like, the ins and outs of each preseason game because, as I said, it's really about young guys. That's really the main reason that the preseason exists, is who's going to make the roster and who isn't. Those are the key factors in that. But granted, guys get reps. It's still some football action. It's good for the younger players, but until September comes around, I don't really take too much away from preseason. I never really have. The Bucks and Steelers later today, the Rams and Chargers, Jets and Giants. There's still a lot of preseason games remaining to take place, and even some going into Monday. The Bengals and Commanders play tomorrow, the Jaguars and Saints. And then preseason fourth week, Steelers, Panthers, Patriots, Giants. It keeps going on and on for one more week on August 21st. So does anybody take anything away from preseason? In fact, we're going to make this a question in the poll here. Do you take anything away from the NFL preseason? Let's put this here in the poll, and we'll see what you say. If you say yes, that's totally fine. I never do. So there it is. Do you take anything ever away from the preseason? That poll is out there now. I believe it is. Yes. Let's see. Still getting used to how the Facebook live interface works, but creating these polls are something I think that we could be a little bit more interactive of if you're just joining the video. Welcome on board, as I said, if you're just joining us here on Raw Takes Live. Let's get right down to business here in Cleveland, Ohio. We'll start things off with Myles Garrett, because that's been the big story here pretty much all week. Another speeding ticket. He has a history of it, and it hasn't necessarily gone away, and I'll just say off the rip, it's not hard to not speed, guys. I've never gotten a speeding ticket in my life, and I don't want to brag and say that, but I don't. It's easy to not speed in a vehicle. So I don't know why guys like Myles Garrett feel like that they could just go and speed out there, and it's dangerous for them, it's dangerous for society, and it doesn't do anything for them when it comes to the NFL. It should be within the contracts that you guys can't speed or do anything stupidly risky while you're outside of work, especially something like speeding in a vehicle. It should be part of the contracts in the NFL. It's something risky, it's something dumb, it's something you don't even have to do. Myles Garrett had no reason to do it, and I think it's a really stupid thing that now he has on his record, because this is a repeat offense for Myles Garrett. He keeps doing this, and it seems like he hasn't learned his lesson from it either. So I hope some discipline comes from the Browns in that essence for it. I do love Myles Garrett personally. I know I've said that multiple times, but his speeding in a car, there's no reason to do that. Imagine being the cop in Strongsville that actually pulled him over, and it's like, oh my God, I just gave Myles Garrett a ticket. Can you believe that? But granted, the law's the law, and Myles Garrett didn't abide by speeding laws in Strongsville at the time. So you can't speed. That's just ridiculous. There's no reason to speed. I'm very critical of that. Myles Garrett's still a great player, but come on, man. You don't have to speed in a car. It's not hard to speed. It's not cool to speed either. I like to emphasize that. Nothing is cool about speeding in vehicles. Yeah, if you have a fast car, that's great. Tracy Chapman did it originally. Then we had the cover version a few years back. I'm not a country singer, so I actually forgot who sang that. But if you have knowledge of that, please put a comment in the video, the comment section below. But no reason to speed. That's just the bottom line. I know I'm making references to music now, but granted, no reason to speed whatsoever. Not at all. All right, let's continue things on here. Let's talk a little bit more about the Browns as a whole right now. I know Shedeur Sanders was stepping out for a little bit this week due to some injuries. I believe he came back to practice, but I actually don't have the exact answer on that, so let me take a look here. So Shedeur Sanders, he looked good in the preseason game, as I mentioned last week. He's unlikely to play with the oblique. So yeah, it's not a huge, I think, injury from terms of the season, but he did get a little bit beat up in practice. So he's not going to be playing in this preseason game. I don't think we need to really see too much more of him in the preseason. I would like to see Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett, to be quite honest with you. But in all honesty, when it comes to the Browns and the preseason, what they really need to do is focus on these young guys. And that's going to be the story for the season anyway. And when you look at the Browns as a whole and all the ridiculous headlines, now with the Myles Garrett news that they have going into this season, it's astronomical. And I don't know if any team in the NFL has any comparison to the headlines the Browns do going into this season. Let's see. We have their star player getting caught for speeding. We have a quarterback total of 5 on the roster as of right now, possibly 6 from what I've been hearing. But 5 quarterbacks on the roster, including Deshaun Watson, I think would make it 6 now that I do the math in my head. But who knows if we're going to even see Deshaun Watson this year. It's very highly unlikely you could ever play him in a Browns uniform again. But you have the quarterback highlights, you have the Myles Garrett situation, young guys on the roster. Are you trying to gain assets from this season if it doesn't go well? Will this season even go well? And in terms of going well, does that mean 5-12 is going well, in all honesty? What does the season mean for the Browns is really the question marks. And I don't think there's a team in the NFL that has this kind of headlines going into it, and you can expect a good thing to come out of it. You can't. I don't think anyone, and happy Saturday to Heather Colbert Hody, who made a comment there. Welcome on board to Raw Takes Live. Thank you for listening. That's my mother, of course. So welcome on board to Raw Takes Live. If you have any comments or thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm still trying to figure out the poll thing. If you could let me know if you see a poll in the comment section, please let me know. Still working on that here, but I did add a poll to this live video. But let's get back to the Cleveland Browns here. The headlines. Myles Garrett, speeding ticket. 5 quarterbacks probably on the roster this year. New stadium debacle. Excuse me. New stadium debacle. What's going on here? There's nothing good about the Browns going into the 2025 season in terms of headlines. No team in the NFL has this much crap thrown at them right away towards the fan base. I mean, the fans are the ones really dealing with this kind of crap. Pittsburgh has Aaron Rodgers. Is there question marks about the Steelers? Of course. Are they expected to finish behind Baltimore and Cincinnati? Sure. But the Steelers are still expected to be good this year. Cincinnati and Baltimore, they're both expected to be good this year. You look at Kansas City, we know the juggernaut they are and have been. You look at Buffalo, we know what they can do. They just haven't gotten over the hump yet. Can they? They might. Cincinnati's the only other team that's gotten over the hump in the AFC since 2020. So those teams, they're all set. Then there's the teams you know are going to be bad but have that one shining star. I mean, nobody's talking about Cam Ward in the national media this offseason. I think that's a bunch of crap. There is absolutely every reason to talk about Cam Ward because he's the first overall pick, and the Tennessee Titans might be a lot better because of him. Obviously, on paper, the Tennessee Titans aren't going to be very good. They're not a good roster. But Cam Ward, if he has a good development year, you could expect good things from the Tennessee Titans beyond 2025. So no, while the Titans aren't expected to be very good, the Titans have Cam Ward, and that's the only shining star they have going into this season. So they're not going to be getting much headlines this year, unlike the Browns with all the crappy headlines they continue to get. You look at other teams around the NFL that have minimal headlines. I mean, the Carolina Panthers, they're not expected to do much. But if you watch the Carolina Panthers towards the end of last season, you'll realize they were in almost every game, win or lose. So it's fair to expect that the Panthers might be a little bit better or maybe around the same this season. Bryce Young looked like he got better, and I think that the Panthers have that to look forward to. Will Bryce Young be better than he was last year? Possibly. Will he be worse? Also possibly. But the Carolina Panthers only really have that headline going into this season. Carolina, Tennessee, those headlines aren't that big. You look at teams like the New York Jets. While they're not expected to do much, they did sign Justin Fields. Can Justin Fields kind of revive his career here after the disaster it's been? Not disaster, but the disastrous situations he was in. I don't think the Bears situation was good for Justin Fields at all, and I don't think the Pittsburgh situation was that good, and he showed some highlights. I still think the jury's out on Justin Fields, but can he kind of revive his career here with the New York Jets? That's not too much in the big media market that is New York. I think that the Jets they're probably going to be bad, but at the same time, are they going to be as bad as the Browns with the same amount of headlines? I don't think so. So for me, I think when you look at those big factors, that's what's really frustrating about the Browns going into 2025. There's just too many bad headlines around this team, And it doesn't look like any of it's going to get better. Neotrans blog yesterday released that ODOT is actually not really looking forward to the Brown Stadium. In fact, so much so, they don't approve of it. And that's going to be another hurdle that the Haslams are going to have to try to get over in order to build that stadium. I believe it's like 53 to 58 feet too tall, and they're worried that's going to impact air traffic with the nearby airport over on 237, which is right by the West Park area of Cleveland. That's where the airport is, for those of you not from Cleveland listening. So, I don't know what else to say besides you're stuck. That headline's coming across for the Browns. Then you have the Myles Garrett. Then you have the Shedeur Sanders, the Dillon Gabriel. There's too many headlines for a roster that's not going to do much. And if you're a roster that's not going to do much, can we have quieter headlines? Can it be like even the New Orleans Saints? I mean, the headline for them is they're just going to be bad this year. That's literally the Saints headline. The Saints are going to go into this year quietly bad. The Panthers are going to go into this year maybe better. Who knows? The Titans may be better because they got Cam Ward, the first overall pick. There's nothing with any kind of like... the Browns have hyped expectations to be bad. None of these other teams have hyped bad expectations. Not even the Jets. And we already know the Jets are historically not a good team. So, it's a joke. It really is. And it's a shame for Browns fans. It's a shame for Northeast Ohio. It's a disgrace, I think, personally, on ownership, because they've never been able to find consistency. And last year, when we did find something good in 2023, it all went down the toilet in 2024. And that's either because of Deshaun Watson, but that's really a lot of it's because of Deshaun Watson. The Deshaun Watson debacle really was a big part of that. And then you add in the stadium crap, and you add in, now you have 5 quarterbacks. Which one's going to be your guy? Who's going to start this year? Probably Flacco, but later in the year we want Shedeur. Or do we want Dillon Gabriel? We didn't even know who in the draft we really wanted to take. It appears that they wanted Dillon Gabriel before Shedeur Sanders, and Shedeur Sanders was the guy they were supposed to take number 2 overall, for crying out loud. But they ended up taking him in the 5th round, which is fine. Like, you got him cheaper, but now you have Dillon Gabriel on the roster too. It's a confusing mismatch of garbage. The Cleveland Browns are a confusing mismatch of garbage. We know in 2025 they're going to stink. We know that the stadium headlines are haunting them. We know the Myles Garrett news that just came out isn't going to help anybody. We know that the 5 quarterback situation doesn't help anyone. The Browns are not quiet even when they are having a bad offseason. They've had an awful offseason. They're going into the year probably going to be bad, and they don't shut up about it. There's teams like the Cleveland Guardians that, like, they silenced this town for the most part when they went on a 10-game losing streak. Because everyone was upset with them, but at the same time, no one was as obsessed of talking about that 10-game losing streak they had like they are about the Browns' disastrous offseason. I mean, are you kidding me? They do it quietly when they're bad. The Cavs, no one really pays attention to them when they're bad either here in town. A few years ago, before we got Donovan Mitchell, and even before we got Darius Garland and Jared Allen really at the level they were, the Cavs were a joke. And even the 4 years LeBron was in Miami, the Cavs were a joke. No one talked about the Cavs in town. There was no buzz. We knew they were going to be bad, and we showed our silence by accepting that. Even in the Manny Acta years of the Cleveland Indians, towards, I believe, the end of 2012, when the season just ended in disaster before we got Terry Francona, and then things turned around then. But the Cleveland Indians then, they were awful, and we didn't really make a huge deal about it in this part of town. So to me, I think it's actually ridiculous that the Browns, for as bad as we think they're going to be this year, are attracting this much highlights. And it's not even locally. It's national. Excuse me. It's nationally. It's nationally. It's unbelievable that the Browns are getting this much highlights for the garbage that they're going to give us most likely this year. Yeah, now you never know. You never know how a season could pan out. The Browns could end up being a 10-7 team this year. I doubt it. I don't think you're going 10-7. Not with 5 quarterbacks and you don't even know who your consistent starter is going to be. The Browns could win a few games. You don't expect them to win in dramatic fashion. A couple rookies could have a couple good games, and it may be looking good for 2026 and beyond. And then maybe the stadium debacle gets figured out. It definitely will get figured out. But still, now that they're denying, the ODOT is denying that the Ohio Department of Transportation, that's what ODOT stands for, by the way. Now that they're denying the stadium rights in Brook Park, possibly. That's going to be another hurdle that the organization is going to have to go through, and that's going to not sit well with the fans. I just want to let you know, the fans, I see a dividing line between it, and I know there's some folks who are for the new stadium. I see more and more folks against it, and I know I'm one of them, but at the same time, I know that's like a divided issue here in town. I still am against the new stadium, so I'm kind of glad ODOT did what they did. 53 feet too tall or something like that. Still, the stadium debacle is something this organization is going to have to get over. So to me, the Browns are in a hurt locker, self-inflicted for the most part, and all these headlines are not deserved because we know in 2025 the Cleveland Browns are expected to miss the playoffs and look terrible. Carolina's not going to have these headlines. New Orleans doesn't have these headlines. They may both be bad teams this year. Maybe Carolina's better. I don't think New Orleans is going to be good. Tennessee's probably going to be a bad team this year. They have Cam Ward, the first overall pick. That's the only headline really going for them. They're not going to be overhyped garbage in the headlines going on and on like the Browns have been. No team in the NFL has these many garbage headlines like the Cleveland Browns do. And the Cleveland Browns fans are going to be subjected to it all season long when they tune in to watch their team play on Sundays. That's just the bottom line, and it's a dang shame. The fans don't deserve it. The Cleveland Browns honestly don't deserve it, the roster, and neither does anybody who watches Red Zone or any casual NFL fan. Why watch the Cleveland Browns right now with this disastrous headline season? I mean, honestly, the headlines that kind of make them intriguing to a degree because you want to find out what's going to happen. And I get that, like finding out what's going to happen with all this nonsense. Like, what I'm suckered into is I want to see what this ODOT thing means for the Cleveland Browns. I want to see what transpires from these 5 quarterbacks at the end of the day. Will I get much out of it? I don't know. But what I get out of it, will that be great? That's still a question mark that we have to see. I don't know. I'm stuck on this one. I really am. But for me, I feel like these headlines could be pretty good. They could be bad. I'm not excited about it, though. The Browns deserve a lot better than this as a roster. And the Haslam organization, how they're going to get over the ODOT situation, that's another question mark, and I can't wait to see how that transpires. Because the Ohio Department of Transportation, as mentioned before, I saw the report from Neotrans blog, they are out on the stadium and don't approve of it, and who knows what's going to happen from there. And that's primarily because of air traffic. So the airport's not too far away from where the new site of the stadium's going to be. So if the stadium's too close to the airport, what kind of trouble could that bring? And it's a domed stadium, but still, air traffic concerns, totally understandable. We'll have to see how that transpires. Maybe the production plans have to go down the 53 feet or however that works. I'm not too sure about the construction, obviously, but that's still a big controversy that's going to have to be resolved throughout the remainder of this season. All right, so that's my thoughts on the Cleveland Browns, obviously. NFL as a whole right now. I'm going to do a prediction show, not this week, upcoming, but the following week. I'm going to go over all 32 teams, my predictions for what will happen with all 32. Obviously, I think you know pretty well what my thoughts on the Cleveland Browns are going to be. But, granted, we'll go over everything here in a little bit. So, that's my thoughts on that. Let's get to some Guardians baseball now. The Guardians last night, they lost to the Atlanta Braves 2-0. The Braves have gotten slightly better as the season's gone on, but they haven't been really a good team. They're just under 500. I believe they're 54-67 or 68. 54-68. Okay, here it is. Yeah, 54-68. The Guardians' offense was completely shut down last night. They had a series against Miami where they took 2 of 3. Gavin Williams was a disaster in that second game, and that cost the Guardians a 13-4 loss, of course. So the Guardians right now, they're kind of in the home stretch here of August. They have all September, of course, to try to really pick things up. They have the Braves 2 more times, including tonight at 7:10 and tomorrow at 1:40. They have the Diamondbacks as the midweek series Monday to Wednesday. They're off Thursday, and then they play the Texas Rangers following. And when you look at the Guardians right now, they are 7.5 games under the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers won last night to get that game ahead lead. What the Guardians are really looking at is the wild card spot. If you look at the standings right now, they're still pretty close to the New York Yankees, 63-58. So they're about a game and a half behind New York for that other wild card spot. There's still some other teams competing for it. You look at the Mariners. The Mariners are in the wild card as is, but the Mariners are still essentially trying to clinch it. They're really competing for a division, though. They're only a half game behind Houston. You look at the Red Sox. They're pretty solidified in the wild card right now. The Blue Jays are pretty far ahead by 5 games. So the Guardians are really just below the threshold there for the wild card. They're competing with teams like the Texas Rangers and the Kansas City Royals to try to get it. They're only a few games away, really. The Yankees are just about a game and a half ahead of them. The Yankees are 5-5 in their last 10. The Yankees are nothing to sneeze at. I'm not a huge believer in the New York Yankees this year. I don't think they're going back to the World Series at the very least. I predicted they weren't going to make the playoffs. I still think that may come to fruition. They're still going to have a winning record. I did predict that. But the Blue Jays and the Red Sox are a lot better than the New York Yankees this year. Even with Aaron Judge, I don't think there's much you could do to save the New York Yankees roster. And I think because of that, it's possible the Guardians could sneak their way in. I still think on paper the Yankees are a much better roster than the Cleveland Guardians are. But the Guardians with a loss yesterday, that's not going to help them too much. But if they can take 2 or 3 from Atlanta, winning these next 2, which I think they can do, I think you're looking at a much better situation for them. If you look at the Kansas City Royals, they're kind of on your tail too. They're 2.5 games behind. They're 10 games behind Detroit. Like I've mentioned numerous times, I don't think the division is really where the Guardians are going to find their playoff berth if they make the playoffs. I think it's going to be within the wild card. If they can find a way to squeak in there, I think it's going to be tough with the Red Sox, Yankees, and Mariners all really trying to clinch onto it, because I don't think the Guardians are as good as those 3 teams. But still, the division's not going to be where it's come. You're going to have to look at the wild card. And they're close, but they got a lot of work to do still. You look at the upcoming schedule, it's definitely doable. I am not a believer in the Texas Rangers at all, even though they did win the World Series a few years ago. They've fallen off completely since, and they have not been nearly as good as they could have been, I think, this year. They have some good guys in their roster and their lineup, and it's just not executing the way it should for the Texas Rangers this season. The Mariners, on the other hand, they're pretty solid. I think the Mariners are going to overtake the Houston Astros and win the West this year. I think it's a matter of when. On paper, I think the Mariners are the better team. The Houston Astros, though, on the other hand, they still have the culture. They're still a really good organization. You're going to be fighting for a wild card spot essentially with them. You're going to have some dangerous wild cards. The way it looks, it's the Houston Astros, Boston Red Sox, and New York Yankees matchups in the wild card. That is going to be one heck of a wild card round in Major League Baseball this year, because there's going to be a lot of teams competing for those spots. And at the same time, if those 3 teams make it, if you're a division winner, the 3rd division winner, which might end up being Detroit, could end up being Seattle, you're going to have a tough matchup right away in a 3-game series. So if you're the Guardians, you're trying to get to that 3-game series situation with a wild card spot, but it's going to be about how you get there. But I don't think you could talk about baseball without talking about the juggernaut that's been the Milwaukee Brewers the last 13 games. 13-game winning streak, beating the Reds in a comeback last night, 8-1. Their offense has just been lighting it up. In their last 4 games, they've scored a total, I'm trying to do the math here, but they scored 7 against the Pirates in the first game of that series. Then they scored 14 against the Pirates, and then 12. And then they scored 10 yesterday and came back. The Reds were leading 8-1, and the Brewers came all the way back to win the game. So if you do the math there, that is 22 plus 14. That is 38 plus another 7, 45 runs in their last 4 games. And then if you add another 7 because of their series with the Mets, 52 runs in their last 5, 59 runs in their last 6, and 62 runs in their last 7. So they have been scoring a crap ton of runs lately. Wow. Outside of the game against the Mets, they haven't scored less than 5 runs in their last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games. Outside of one game against the Mets, which they still won 3 games. They've won 13 in a row, but in their last 9 games, they haven't had a game where they've scored less than 5 runs. I am still a believer that the Milwaukee Brewers are a regular season team and they're not going to get past the LA Dodgers. But I give them credit. They are a really good regular season team. They ended up being a lot better than I expected they would be. They looked like they were a shell of themselves at the beginning of the year. But they've really steamed up and have proven to be a really good baseball team. They're well managed. They have good pitching. They have still good arms in that bullpen. That's going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs. I don't think anyone wants to face the Milwaukee Brewers in a playoff series. I think it's likely that they have a good shot at getting to the NLCS. I don't think they're going to get to the World Series, though. The Dodgers, I still think, are the best team in the National League until proven otherwise. The Mets have been a pretty big disaster in the National League lately. They're 64-58 still, but they have lost a ton of games, including a sweep over the Guardians. The Braves, they took one from the Braves, but the Braves pretty much kicked them in the chin, too. I mean, Braves won 11-6 the other night, and then 4-3. The Mets did destroy them the first game, but honestly, it really was like a Braves season. I think the Braves have kind of come alive lately. The Braves do have a lot of good players on their roster. I think they've kind of underachieved this year. It's going to cost them, I think, a chance to go to the playoffs. But the Braves are definitely a lot better on paper than what their roster, than what their record says. Excuse me there. Chicago Cubs, 68-53, 9 games behind the Milwaukee Brewers right now. And I thought this was going to be the Cubs division all year long. I really thought the Cubs were the best team in the Central. But they've proven to really struggle lately, and I don't even think they're going to even come remotely close. They'll fight for a wild card spot. I don't know if they're going to make it. The Padres are right there, and the Mets, they probably will make the wild card. I wouldn't be surprised if they do that. Now they look at the standings, but the Cubs, to me, I think have been a pretty big disappointment. They should have been a lot better than they've been this season. I like their roster a lot, and Matthew Boyd has been phenomenal for them this year. It makes you wonder why the Guardians didn't sign him back, right? But yeah, that's my thoughts there. And then you look at the Guardians. Not the Guardians, excuse me. Oh, man. Excuse me. You look at the Cincinnati Reds kind of finding their rhythm a little bit as well with a winning record in the wild card. Can't believe I said Guardians over Cincinnati. But the Cincinnati Reds are 64-59. Tito Francona making a huge impact there. The Miami Marlins are also not far away from 500. They're still 6 games behind it, but they were 500 at the beginning of this week. The Miami Marlins also took care of business against the New York Yankees pretty well. So overall, the Miami Marlins have a bright future ahead of them based on some of the offense they've been producing over the last stretch of games. But the Miami Marlins, I don't think are going to be a team you could really take that seriously. Well, that's my thoughts on the Major League Baseball playoffs and standings so far. Let me know what you think. Give a comment, like this video. We want to hear from you here on Raw Takes Live. That's what this show's all about. All right. Well, training camps are still going on in the NFL, and Major League Baseball is going to get down to the nitty-gritty here. I know we're going to go to basketball here for just a second because the NFL announced some Christmas games earlier this week, and we're going to wrap up the show right after. But if you have any thoughts on anything with the NFL or Major League Baseball, please make sure to leave a comment as this live continues. But the Christmas Day slate of games this year, Cavs and the Knicks will be opening night. Excuse me. This is opening night's games. But the Christmas games have also been determined. But yeah, excuse me. The Christmas games and the opening day games. So the Cavs and the Knicks are going to open up the regular season this year, 7 o'clock on October 22nd. Then at 9:30, the Spurs and the Mavericks, a battle of Texas. Then Oklahoma City and Indiana, a rematch of the finals, will take place the following Thursday. Great way to open the season there. And then the Nuggets and Warriors will take place at night. I still think the golden era of Golden State is long gone, but I get it. They're still a good organization and fighting for playoff spots and playoff wins and whatnot, and got a playoff series win this year. But that's another okay matchup, I think, for the open of the season. I don't know why we always got to include Golden State and everything, but OKC and Indiana, I think, is going to be a nice one, too, just to kind of relive the final series. Indiana now without Halliburton this year, who knows how that's going to make an impact. I still think they're a very well-coached basketball team, though, so who knows what will take place there. And then the Christmas Day schedule, the Cavs and the Knicks again. They're really putting the Cavs and Knicks in prime time, and right now on paper, it looks like the Cavs and Knicks are really going to be running the East this year. So I think the NBA recognizes that. Cavs and Knicks are going to be a noon game on Christmas Day. Spurs and Thunder at 2:30. Mavericks and Golden State at 5. Houston and LA, the Lakers that is, at 8. And the T-Wolves and Nuggets at 10:30. That's a good slate of games there for Christmas Day as well. But at the end of the day, too, and I've said this multiple times over and over again, the regular season to me doesn't really mean too much. You can win as many regular season games as you want. It doesn't matter until you get to playoffs. The Cavs won 64 games and were a second round out. Indiana won 50 games and went all the way to the finals. So, you know, it doesn't really matter what the matchup is until you get to the postseason. But granted, those are some key matchups that are coming up in the NBA. Just announced this week. Figure we got to throw those out there to give the Cavs and the rest of the NBA some love as well before their season begins. And basketball starting off isn't actually too far away. It's a couple months away, but about 2 months. So not too far away from already the start of another league year for the NBA. In terms of the NFL, we're not too far away from football here in September upcoming. I'm super pumped about it. I'm not as pumped about the Browns as I am the other 31 teams in the NFL, but that's okay. we're going to see what transpires there. I'm going to probably root a lot for the Dolphins this year. My buddy Mark in heaven right now was a huge Miami Dolphins fan. He passed away of stomach cancer a few years ago, and so in his honor, wearing some of his Miami Dolphins gear and rooting for his team. All right. Appreciate everybody tuning in to today's edition of Raw Takes Live. We're going to be back. Not next week, but the following week. Next week, we're going to take a hiatus. So the following Saturday, we are going to be back. The time is still to be determined on that. August 30th will be the next edition of Raw Takes Live. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if this is on YouTube. Make sure to give this video a like if it's on Facebook. Hope you have a great day. Thank you for staying tuned, and we'll be back with your next edition of Raw Takes Live 2 weeks from today.